10 years ago, Arizona entered a new era, the era of catastrophic wildfires. Tonight, we look back at how it all began and what's been done since. The White Mountains, Arizona's high country playground. But in years of drought, a recipe for disaster.
A lot of people in our country are pulling for you.
June 18, 2002, a tribal firefighter hoping to get work set a fire near the rodeo grounds in Sibique. A few days later, miles away, a woman lost in the forest set a signal fire near Chediski Mountain. The fires merged to become Rodeo-Chediski, the perfect storm.
The top end of Lakeside Pine Top.
It was Jim Paxson's job to keep a fearful public informed.
It was a mega fire. The phrase was coined from the Rodeo-Chediski. So we entered the era of these huge fires that we can't control.
The plumes of smoke rose tens of thousands of feet and then collapsed, sending fire in every direction, 50,000 acres a day. Ranger Ed Collins remembers.
It's an incredibly helpless feeling when something of that scale comes onto land that you're responsible for managing.
By June 22nd, after making runs through several subdivisions, the fire appeared to be unstoppable, and officials made the decision to evacuate Show Low. 30,000 people fled. How in the world did you guys save Show Low and Pine Top?
Very aggressive firefighting.
We've got a little spot across the dozer line here.
In a last-ditch effort, firefighters made their stand along Highway 60, setting backfires in hopes a lack of fuel would bring down the monster. It worked. Show Low and Pine Top Lakeside were saved, but not before huge portions of outlying developments were left in charred ruins. Rodeo-Chediski consumed close to 500 homes, and about half of those were in this one subdivision called Timberland, just outside of Show Low. And in many cases, all that's left is the foundation. Have you seen a number of people leave here since the fire?
I've seen quite a few, and I've never seen so many places up for sale.
Bill Scribner and his friends still meet every Wednesday at the Linden Fire substation to count their blessings because their homes were saved. Their neighbor, Beverly Howell, was not so fortunate. She and her husband saw 37 years of work on their cabin disappear in minutes.
We felt like one of our kids had died. I mean, that was, and I felt terrible that we felt so bad over something.
While the Rodeo-Chediski fire itself did not kill anyone, Howell is quick to remind people of its aftermath.
Right after the fire, there was like 6 or 7 deaths in here, and I think it was just, you know, from shock or overwork.
The Howells' new home now sits in the exact location of their old cabin. Homes can be rebuilt in a matter of weeks, not so the forest. For the forest, that was the beginning of a long, long recovery. In fact, it is just beginning. We'll show you what we mean next on Not on Your Side at 10. We've seen the people who survived Rodeo-Chediski. Now a look at the forest. 10 years later, the restoration has just begun.
It'll take decades before seedlings get out into the area to reforest.
It may be a slow process, but Mother Nature is making progress.
And we can look around and we can see grass and forbs and annuals and oaks and small brush. It's a deer and elk paradise. Our watersheds were pretty tough. Now our water's running clear and clean. And we've got fish back in all of these streams that we lost before.
Even as Mother Nature puts back in some areas, the U.S. Forest Service takes away in others. With forest thinning projects targeted to protect homes.
On average, we could do about 10 to 14 semi-loads a day cutting.
Ranger Ed Collins points to the visible difference in a forest that's been treated and one that has not. He says a thinned forest is healthier, safer, and a dream come true for firefighters.
Because the fire will drop to the forest floor and they stand a chance of controlling that fire. If it stays in the treetops, all they can do is back up and watch it burn.
Remember Beverly Howell, whose burned home was surrounded by trees?
It was like a thicket. People had told us to thin it before, and of course my husband didn't want to cut down a tree.
And her husband has company from other homeowners and from environmentalists not convinced that tree thinning does any good at all. But those who have made our forests their life's work point to history.
We need to change our mindsets. We need to understand how this country looked before white man got here 150 years ago, that 50 to 60 trees per acre, not 600 to 1,000.
Along White Mountain Boulevard, a statue memorializes Rick Lupe, one of the hero firefighters who saved Show Low. 1 year later, another fire would claim Lupe's life, but not his legacy, one of love for the land and the high cost of protecting it.
And what we need to do as managers is learn to work with Mother Nature instead of fighting her. But she's not going to stand for as many trees as we have in the forest. We'll either cut them or she'll burn them like she did here on the Rodeo-Chediski, and we'll all start over.
The tribal firefighter who set the rodeo fire served 9 years in prison. The woman who set the Chediski fire was never prosecuted because the U.S. attorney thought a jury would not convict a person who was simply trying to survive. However, the White Mountain Apache tribe is still trying to press a civil case against her. As for Jim Paxson, he is now the Public Information Officer for Arizona Game and Fish. And you can see the entire interview with Paxson at KGUN9.com. We'll be right back with the weather.